Welcome. Today we're studying the Batman Nightfall series, the landmark crossover that quite literally breaks the bat. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll walk you through issues 1 to 19, peeling back the layers of the story's central theme, what it means to break a symbol, what it costs a man, and what happens when a city's idea of a hero is replaced by something colder and more efficient. Expect plot beats, character beats, and the thematic scaffolding that holds them together. Exhaustion, arrogance, contingency, identity, and the brittle line between justice and vengeance. Without further ado, let's begin. The opening issue establishes a Gotham stretched thin. Batman faces an organized surge of villainy. The Arkham breakout is being quietly engineered, and we get the first hints of a strategic, physical campaign against him. Bruce Wayne is exhausted, patched, and still giving everything he has to protect the city. The first issue sets the tone. This isn't about a single fight, it's a war of attrition. Nightfall's genius is structural. It doesn't simply introduce a stronger foe, it methodically drains the hero of resources, stamina, allies, and information. The early pages are all wear and strain, visually and narratively compressing a long career of crime fighting into frayed edges. Here, breaking begins as depletion. The book invites the reader to watch the bat's ecosystem fail him, the signal that the symbol depends not just on physical ability, but on networks and rest, things Batman has been denying himself. The mastermind behind the plot becomes clear. An orchestrated mass release of Arkham inmates. Chaos floods Gotham's streets. Batman scrambles, chasing leads, saving innocents, and trying to plug the holes as the city's criminal infrastructure goes haywire. Nightfall turns high-concept villainy into institutional failure. The breakout is less about each escaped crook and more about the spectacle of systems collapsing. Batman's reaction reveals his Achilles heel, the compulsion to respond to every crisis personally. This sequence is a masterclass in escalation. As Batman expends himself putting out fires, the real threat, something that can absorb and exploit that exhaustion, waits in the wings. The issue insists that breaking the bat is systemic, not accidental. With Gotham unstable, Batman's patrols become continuous. He's moving from call to call with almost no downtime. Allies begin to notice his unusual fatigue, but Bruce keeps pushing. This section is about pace as a narrative device. By ratcheting the tempo, the story lets the reader feel the hero's dwindling reserves. The cinematography of panels, long, busy spreads with little rest, mirrors Batman's physiology. Nightfall uses the city as both character and adversary. Gotham's needs are endless, and its crises are cleverly timed to sap the one person who can respond. Thematically, the book asks, at what point does noble obsession become self-destruction? The answer grows darker with each patrol. Hints of a larger plan surface. Batman tracks patterns in the breakout, sensing deliberate coordination. The narrative teases a hand more calculated than the typical Arkham inmate. The Ark's structural villainy becomes more sinister here. Nightfall doesn't pit Batman against random chaos, but against an opponent who studies him. This issue frames the antagonist as an analyst of Bruce's routines, a mirror that weaponizes knowledge. It's a narrative move that makes the eventual break feel inevitable. When your enemy knows how you sustain yourself, they can choose the right moment to strike. That insight reframes the Ark's moral stakes. The Bat is vulnerable precisely because he is predictable in his duty. We get background hints about a new looming figure behind the chaos, a physically dominant presence with method and strategy. The issue builds suspense around who is orchestrating Gotham's fall. Introducing an enigmatic mastermind shifts Nightfall from stress test to siege. The book plays with mythic build-up. You don't see the hammer yet, you just notice the dents in the wall. The narrative architecture here is patient. Rather than immediately revealing a superpowered antagonist, it offers glimpses, footprints, rumors, an uncanny intelligence. That ambiguity heightens the sense of inevitability when the figure finally reveals himself. Thematically, this issue underscores that breaking the bat requires both brawn and brains. The street-level consequences intensify. Citizens, cops, and minor heroes scramble. Infrastructure strains under the rising wave of crime. Batman tries to hold the line. Nightfall's middle chapters are about consequences. This section foregrounds Gotham itself, not as scenery but as collateral. When crime pays no social price, the city frays. The story uses this to show how a symbol like Batman represents more than a single man. The moral question emerges: who is responsible for protecting Gotham when the protector is incapacitated? This chapter implicitly criticizes systems that center security on one point of failure. It's an argument for redundancy, but also a condemnation of Bruce's refusal to accept it. Batman makes tactical mistakes as a consequence of fatigue. Allies step in, strained but necessary. The rescue of civilians becomes chaotic. Small losses mount. The book humanizes heroism by showing how competence degrades. Nightfall resists the superhero fantasy that sheer will can substitute for rest and planning. Instead, we see the arithmetic of error. One misjudged leap, one delayed call, and the ripple is measurable. The issue exposes the hubris at the heart of the Bat. Unyielding presence equals unguarded vulnerability. This sequence deepens the reader's sympathy by showing Bruce's commitment and his tragic inability to accept help. The narrative tightens, clues converge, and the mastermind's presence becomes undeniable. The city's trust in Batman begins to crack as the incidents mount. Tension here is narrative compression. Nightfall makes the reveal almost ceremonial. The world has been primed to watch the hero fall. Thematically, the issue interrogates public faith. A dependent population misreads a man's endurance for permanence. The writers are staging an almost sociological experiment. If the Sentinel fails, what happens to civic order? The impending reveal is less a shock and more the clear passing of a pattern we've been taught to accept as normal. Batman faces stronger, more coordinated threats. Skirmishes are longer and costlier. Bruce's body begins to show real, cumulative damage. This is the beginning of the physical crescendo. Nightfall pivots from strategic undermining to direct physical contest. The punches land with thematic weight. Each blow is not just physical harm, but a mark on the symbol. The art and pacing here often slow at crucial moments. Each hit reads as a metabolic failure. The book is relentless. The hero is allowed no graceful exit. This issue emphasizes the cruelty of attrition and frames the upcoming climactic meeting as an almost mathematical result of earlier choices. The antagonist's manipulations become explicit. We see careful engineering, supply lines shut down, allies baited, timing exploited. Batman scrambles to adapt, but continues to be several steps behind. Here, Nightfall's villain is no mere thug. They're a logistics expert who weaponizes Gotham's dependencies. The issue forces an uncomfortable admission. Batman's strength is also his weakness, because he's the linchpin of an entire security ecosystem. Thematically, the text explores systems theory in superhero terms. Centralized heroism is fragile. This chapter prepares the emotional terrain for the fall by making it clear the Bat is being systematically hollowed out. Coordinated attacks converge. Batman is spread thin across multiple instances and is forced into impossible choices about whom to save. The city suffers. The moral center sharpens here. By presenting simultaneous emergencies, the book asks readers to reckon with pragmatic ethics. You can't save everyone. Batman's decisions, which life to prioritize, carry narrative judgment. This chapter is psychologically brutal. It erodes the comforting certainty that heroes are benevolent omnipotence. Thematically, the chapter underlines tragedy. When you try to shoulder everything, you inevitably fail someone. A deceptively quiet section here. Brief respite, reflection, and a chance to check wounds. But the pause itself is part of the antagonist's design, to lull and then deliver the decisive blow. This story uses silence as a weapon. It gives readers and characters a moment to breathe, a dangerous mercy. The false calm is narrative cruelty. It makes the impending catastrophe feel more personal. Thematically, the lull serves as a mirror to the myth of invulnerability. Rest is often mistaken for recovery. The creative decision to include this beat deepens the sense of inevitability. It's the lull before the instrument strikes. At last, the antagonist is fully revealed. A monstrous, brilliant figure driven to test and break Batman. The confrontation escalates quickly toward a decisive battle. The reveal is a catharsis and horror at once. Bane, perhaps Batman's greatest foe yet, is designed to be the perfect foil. He combines tactical intelligence with physical supremacy. Thematically, his introduction crystallizes the series' thesis. The Bat can be physically and philosophically outmatched. The imagery often contrasts the hulking, clinical force of Bane with Batman's weary, flayed humanity. This is where breaking turns from metaphor into occurrence. The first true confrontation between Batman and Bane unfolds. It's a drawn-out, punishing engagement that exposes Bruce's depleted state against Bane's ultimate preparation. Nightfall stages this duel as an exercise in inevitability. Every grapple and strategy on the page reads like a graduation of consequence. Missed opportunities, delayed reaction times, and the weight of previous exhaustion manifesting in slowed reflexes. This chapter choreographs violence to deliver narrative logic. The Bat isn't beaten because he misjudges technique. He's beaten because the whole edifice of his vigilance and morality were undermined beforehand. This is a brutal meditation on timing. A hero might be noble and skilled, but he's not immune to being defeated. The iconic moment, a final catastrophic sequence where Bane physically overpowers Bruce, culminating in the famous and devastating breaking of Batman's back. This is the emotional and symbolic apex. The literal breaking of the spine is staged with heavy narrative and visual emphasis because it's not simply bodily harm, it's the dismantling of the myth. The scene functions as more than utter brutality. The symbol is publicly and unambiguously shattered. What makes it resonate is the setup. The impact lands because the story earned it. Thematically, the break demolishes any heroic invincibility and forces readers to confront mortality and the ethical fragility of depending on a single savior. Gotham panics. Bruce is incapacitated and hospitalized. The city and Batman's allies react with shock, grief, and confusion. Questions bloom about who will fill the void. Nightfall's aftermath examines institutional shock. This chapter is quieter but no less powerful. The narrative shifts from action to consequence. The emotional labor is foregrounded. Allies struggle with guilt. The public questions the future, and crime syndicates test new waters. The theme here is vacuum. Symbols vacated are not harmless. They invite opportunism and identity crises. The book asks whether a symbol can be preserved without its original keeper, and whether the city can accept an imperfect stand-in. With Bruce out of commission, Jean-Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, steps into the cowl. Initially, he succeeds where others might fail, stopping criminals and filling the gap. Nightfall complicates the idea of replacement. Azrael's entry is a provocative thought experiment. Can a different man in the costume maintain the same moral center? At first, the success is convincing. The city is safer, and Azrael seems decisive. But the issue plants seeds of trouble. Azrael's methods are purer to his own conditioning, less tempered by Bruce's code. The narrative poses an ethical question. Is effectiveness enough? Thematically, this chapter probes the difference between symbol and soul. It's a crucial step. The bat is broken, and the city must decide whether to accept a new face. Azrael's approach hardens. He becomes more violent, aggressive, and persistent. The mask's shape changes in the public eye, violence-driven than fear-driven. This is the second climax of Nightfall's second act. The series isn't simply about physical breaking, it's about philosophical corruption. Azrael epitomizes the danger of a symbol divorced from the man who tempered it with morality. The issue demonstrates how methods define values. A more efficient guardian can be worse if they abandon restraint. Nightfall uses this to interrogate vigilantism's ethics. A protector who uses violence to enforce order risks becoming another oppressor. The arc thereby expands its breaking theme to moral authority. In the final installation of this comic series, with Azrael consolidating power and Gotham changing under his rule, tensions peak. Allies question the new Batman, and seeds are sown for Bruce's eventual recovery and confrontation with what his symbol has become. The closing of this sequence shifts focus from spectacle to identity. The book forces a reflection on what Batman stands for. Is the symbol defined by costumes and deeds, or by the ethos of the person inside? Nightfall answers by showing both the seductive power of a purer, harsher justice and the social cost of losing balance. The issue prepares readers for a reckoning. The city needs a protector, but not at the price of losing the moral compass that made the Bat distinct. The breaking theme now has two targets, the body and the idea. Taken as a whole, Nightfall is less a story about one villain and more a meticulous dismantling of a system. It breaks Batman at multiple levels. Physically, the back; operationally, systems overloaded; and symbolically, replacement by a harsher successor. The arc asks uncomfortable questions about hero worship and redundancy. When a city depends on a single savior, what happens when that savior falls? It also interrogates the ethics of methods. Azrael's success exposes how efficiency can masquerade as moral clarity. This is a story of contingency and consequence. Plans, even heroic ones, must have contingencies, otherwise they become brittle. Artistically, Nightfall's structure, the slow ratchet of exhaustion, the reveal of a tailored antagonist, then the painful social experiment in replacement, is surgical. It uses pacing, visual brutality, and character psychology to make the fall inevitable and devastating. It also gives us a rare narrative that allows Batman to be fallible without ending the myth. By breaking the Bat, the story ultimately forces his symbol to be re-examined and rebuilt, which is a kind of rebirth story in its own right. This has been an in-depth summary, review, and analysis of the DC Comics series, Batman Nightfall. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment what comics you'd like to see in the future. Please also consider purchasing the official comics to support the creators. Thanks for watching.